So, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Nestor, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Enrique Cornielle. A pleasure to be here to discuss security topics. I hope you learn and enjoy the event. So, let's start talking about security is everyone's job. So, one of the best approaches talking about security, especially security in hybrid workplace, is create a culture where where security is everyone's job. To accomplish this, we can provide guidance in security topics to our employees, such as keeping device healthy and managed. So all devices that need access to corporate resources must be managed to seamlessly keep your device and secure and protected from phishing and malicious website, for example. And another solution could be offering trainings. So you can offer some resources and guidelines for employees that would work remotely and part or full time directly. Also, securing home offices. So both sides of the connection needs to be secure. So to accomplish this, we need to provide guidelines and best practices to protect home offices or of our employees directly. And also, and the last one is building a zero trust mentality. So where you assume breach and check everything, I will be talking about this deeply later. So while we have been remote and as part of a security trust, zero trust approach, zero trust framework, we also have been moving employees off the corporate network. So an internet first approach directly reduces exposures and give employees a consistent experience whether they are at home or in office. These steps will be first of many in ensuring our hybrid workforce is as secure as possible. And there are other practical things that we'll be talking about this later, focus on, and every business should consider as we move into a hybrid work. So let's continue. So what about identity protection? And identity is more important than ever. So identity is more important than ever. Use the tools you already have to protect it. So as I mentioned before, an internet-first approach reduces exposures. In this approach, identity is the battleground for attacks of the future. And we know with passwords, password spraying, and phishing are the entry point for the vast majority of attacks. As a famous CISO said, hackers don't break in, they log in. So in building a defense of this new threat landscape, the first thing every business should do is examine the tools that they already have. For example, a good example of this is that in Microsoft 365, MFA, multi-factor authentication, it's free. And a lot of companies don't use it, doesn't have it turned on, for example. We saw a significant jump in usage when the pandemic began. And when that happened, we saw a significant decrease in aggregate compromises when you use, for example, MFA. And another use of tool for mitigate this kind of attacks based on identity is use a CASP, Cloud Asset Security Broker, for example. And one of the best examples in you can use this, a CASP, is Microsoft Cloud App Security. It's a solution of Microsoft that is included in Microsoft 365 Defender. So a CASP sits between cloud service user and cloud application and monitors all activity and enforce security policies everywhere. So talking about the zero trust mindset that I talked before, embracing a zero trust mindset directly. So in a world where identity and is the new battleground directly, adopting a zero trust strategy is no longer an option. So it's a new business imperative. People and organizations need to have a trust in the technology that brings them together. So the term zero trust may feel like the opposite, but when you assume breach and you provide the least privileged access necessary, it actually empowers employee with the flexibility and freedom they want. So the zero trust model operates on the principle of trust no one, verify everything. Malicious actors being able to bypass conventional access controls demonstrate traditional security measures are no longer enough. So Microsoft has their own version of Zero Trust framework, the one that I have here. The one is based in three principles and three pillars. So let's dive into it. And the three principles are verify explicitly, always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points, least privileged access, as I mentioned before, limit user access with just-in-time JIT and just-enough access, and also implementing risk-based adaptive policies and data protection. And the last one, the last principle, is assume breach. Minimize blast radius and segment access, verify end-to-end encryption, and use analytics to get visibility all across the crowd, and improve defenses. So about the six pillars, the first one is identity. Verify and secure each identity with a strong authentication across your entire digital state. For example, you can deploy MFA, Azure Active Directory, and Identity and Access Management, IAM, and about endpoints, devices and endpoints. And you need to gain visibility into devices that are crossing your network. So ensure compliance and health status before granting access. So you can apply this in your organization using, for example, Microsoft Intune. It's the solution of Microsoft MDM and NIM, and Endpoint Manager, and Microsoft Defender for Endpoints, and also using the DLP policies. And another pillar is apps. What about apps? And with apps in the Zero Trust model, you can discover shadow IT, ensure appropriate in-app permissions, get access based on real-time analytics, and monitor and control usage actions. Also, you can apply this using, for example, the tool that I mentioned before, Microsoft Cloud App Security, and in that solution, in that tool, it also includes Cloud Discovery. With Cloud Discovery, we can discover shadow IT in our organization. And also another pillar is data. So move from perimeter-based data encryption to data-driven protection, classify and label data directly, and also encrypting and restricting access based on organization policies can ensure to protect our data. So you can apply this in your organization based on the Microsoft Zero Trust model using Azure Information Protection, even the plan one or the plan two. The difference between both is that the plan two, you can implement automatic responses to classify and label of the data. So what about infrastructure? You can use telemetry to detect attacks and anomalies automatically, block and flag risky behavior. You can apply this using, for example, Azure Security Central, VNets, peering rules, network security groups, NSG, Azure Firewall, and Azure Sentinel, for example. And what about networks? So ensure devices and users aren't trusted just because they are on an internal network. So one way to protect this is encrypting all internal communication, and you, for example, use microsegmentation of our network. You can apply this using network segmentation, Azure DDoS, Azure Firewall, Azure WAF, Web Application Firewall, Azure VPN, and encrypting the communication using SSL or TLS, for example. So there is an official tool by Microsoft, the Zero Trust Maturity Model Assessment. It's really easy to use. You don't even need an account. There are a couple questions for each pillar in order to understand how your company is based in the Zero Trust model, but specifically in the Microsoft CT model. So I can show you very quickly about the Zero Trust Maturity Assessment tool. So there you go. This is the link. I can show you in the chat briefly. So there are a couple questions about across all the six pillars that I mentioned before. Identities, for example, have you enabled MFA for internal users? About
Enrique,
endpoints. Yeah,
before you move there, can you move back to what you were showing before?
yeah.
Thank you. So this is Rena from Solvex also. Enrique, there is some feedback on the chat, so it's good for you to read it. Answering to the question that Maria had, what Enrique was presenting was actually the zero trust model, and all the pillars are the ones that you are seeing there. So
Yeah.
identity, device endpoints, data, apps, infrastructure are the pillars that we have to take care when we go in depth with security. And now what Enrique is going to do is to actually show you how you can use it on a website that's, let's say, free for you to
Yeah.
like to take advantage of. Based on that, and with the feedback that we have from Ronald, we can move forward, Enrique. Thank you.
Speaker and okay. So thanks. I'm gonna speak a little bit slower. So let's continue. So I'm gonna show you the tool directly. For example, it's all across the 6 pillars about identities. Have you enabled MFA for internal users? Let's say some users, and which form of passwordless authentication are enabled for your users? And let's say only Windows Hello for Business. Which of your user groups are provisioned with single sign-on? Let's say only customers. Which of the following security policies and genes are used to make an access decision for enterprise resources? Let's say, for example, 3 solutions that I mentioned before, MDM, like Intune, let's say SIEM, like Azure Sentinel, and a cloud access security broker, like Microsoft Cloud App Security. So have you disabled legacy authentication? Let's say I didn't disable. Are you using real-time user and sign-in risk detection? Let's say no. And let's see here, let's see CASP and CM and endpoint protection. So for you to know how this tool, this free tool that you don't even need an account to do it, let's see how my company is maturing the pillar of identity directly. So which of the following context is used in your access policies? Let's say I only use location. I only use the network that is connecting. So are you using identity secure score for guidance? Let's say no. And for example, Microsoft tell you a lot of options that where you can improve this pillar directly. So for example, you can implement MFA and options where you can implement MFA. Enable passwordless authentication is a new thing that is Microsoft trying to implement, where in the future they say that they're not gonna be password. So there's an option to implement single sign-on directly and block legacy authentication. So the thing with this is that you can see how mature is your company across the 6 pillars. So if you want a link, or you can directly search in Google Microsoft Shield Trust Maturity Model Assessment, and it's going to appear directly this page.